Sup Shredders, my name is Logan aka Spiderhands, and welcome to an SP Reacts, where today we have ourselves an EP from an ex named Spud Davenport titled Assterisk, or Asterisks. I haven't got the accent down. And if we switch over to here, I don't usually have this layout. Because I'm using Music Beat today, because this isn't released. This video is coming out on the day that the EP is to release. The 20th of January 2026, but as of the time we recording this, it hasn't released. So I've got it on Music Beat here, we've got the art here, I'll zoom in on that. We've also got the website here with the video. Apparently the single man baby is on YouTube, so they're on the YouTube channel as well. We're going to be listening through each of these tracks though, on this EP from start till finish, and we're going to hear what we think. Starting with Arsehole, let's go.
You make it look so easy to be an asshole. Why wouldn't everyone's kid wanna be an asshole? Why try being decent when it's such a hassle?
Very cool response with the accordion there.
You make it look so easy to be an asshole. You've mastered the art of lying. Looks like you're not even trying, and you don't seem to care if anyone is buying it. Your mouth is a thing of legend, with words from another dimension. And if I sound a bit complimentary, don't mention it. You make it look so easy to be an asshole. Why wouldn't everyone's kid wanna be an asshole? Why try being decent when it's such a hassle? Yeah, you make it look so easy to be an asshole.
Great harmonic unison there.
You make it look so easy to be an asshole.
Just a really, really impressive start to proceedings with the EP with this first track, Arsehole. It cuts straight to the point. I mean, I'm sure you can see with this guy over here what this could be about, all about the ridiculous state of America today, which, given recent events with January 3rd, it's just getting crazier, isn't it? It's just getting loopier, whatever side of the aisle you're on. So what do we think this track is about, aside from it being an arsehole? I think that when he talks about everyone's kid wanting to be an arsehole, it's almost like we're discussing the fact that people feel that it's permissible to misbehave, to behave poorly. And I kind of adore it in a sense, because what it's saying is, this is my personality, my brand for the entirety of this EP, and if you don't like it, go away, effectively. When he says your mouth is a thing of legend, the stuff that comes out of it, yeah, it does sound kind of complimentary, but there's like two sides to it. It's clever, it's witty. I dig the sense of humor behind it. I think the way it's sung is very accessible. There's a clear contempt in the tone of it, but we're also trying to make sort of catchy chord, like chorus melodies. And I dig the yay, those kind of vocal parts that come in around the halfway point. I just think they sound neat. They're a great call and response to what's going on with the main vocals, and it's just almost like the choir is singing along with them. In a short track like this, you get all the context you need across those various kind of chorus sections, as well as those kind of like foundational kind of like storytelling verses, and you don't need more than that. Honestly, like the point comes across really effortlessly. And a lot of these tracks are actually very short, like between 2 and 4 minutes, which is a sweet spot in terms of structure, but just the vocals themselves, we show solid vocal technique. It's not too clean or pristine. There's a bit of edge and grittiness to it. But I like that. I think that kind of raw, authentic tone, which I know authentic and is such a generic thing to say, but I don't know how else to describe it. It's just, it's just kind of earthy, and we just sound so tired and pissed off, but we're trying to make an effort to be make it sort of like sound cool for the listener. And I think it's a nice sort of like equilibrium was set there for those backing vocals to be more of a kind of like a melodic instrument kind of approach there. I thought was really sensible as well. Structurally, again, this track has those main choruses and verses, and it has an instrumental section as well where things kind of rise almost like a crescendo, the climax to the frustration that you have, but it's in a way that's kind of playful and doesn't take itself too seriously. Immediately at the start of the track, he goes, "You make it look so easy to be an asshole," and it's just it cuts to the chase. There's absolutely no filler there, and we have the accordion, the guitars, the bass, the drums coming at that point, each performing different functions but being relatively cohesive in their approach. There are these kind of signature melodies that the accordion plays that are just so kind of merry and cheery, and there's this kind of Irish kind of folk feel to it that's just really pleasant to listen to. If you remove the context of the vocals, what they're discussing there, the kind of the genuine depression that can be felt depending on how you lean, it's just a really beautiful sounding piece, honestly, and it's nice and happy. And I think that's an interesting equilibrium there tonally to put that kind of major spin on it, that kind of sarcastic sort of tinge to it. The guitars are wonderfully supportive on the sides of the stereo field as well. I like the kind of throaty, kind of like cleanish tone to it. I know it sounds like a bit of a juxtaposition, but it's like it's not too sterilized, but it's also... you can kind of imagine it being like kind of played in a pub rock bar or something like that. And it's just these open chords or maybe even bars occasionally that allow whatever vocals or accordion playing on top to just kind of to flourish. And you have kind of like just overdriven guitars a bit later on with some palm mute, some power chord elements there, but there's nothing too heavy. It's trying to sort of be a little bit laissez-faire about it, which is kind of interesting. The bass is nicely in time rhythmically with the unison there to reinforce some of the notes within the chord progressions, the bass notes, and I think the drums as well are wonderful team players in the sense of keeping a sort of like a chord note accent with the main sort of hi-hat, kick and snare patterns. And there's occasional snare fills to kind of tide us over between parts, but ultimately it's more about the groove of the chord note accents with the eighth note patterns on the hi-hats, crashes, snares and kicks. And that's all we need from the percussion. We need it to support, Spud on the mic is the main focal point outside of the sub leads from like the accordions and the coloration of the guitar parts. It's just a very kind of it's a catchy, simple track, not overcomplicated, and communicates the mood well. And you have variations to the vocal melodies as well, which, further incite a lack of a need for an alternate sort of dominant lead layer there. Spud is charismatic and it carries himself on top effortlessly. And I think the way that he sings with the melodies and scale choices here, if you weren't paying attention to lyrics, you might nod your head along to not realizing what's being said to you. And I just think it's kind of cool. There are songs where you can enjoy the way they sound and not pay attention to the lyrics, but they kind of sneak up on you a little bit. I think the accordion at the end kind of signing us out with the guitar kind of riff fading into the ether, it kind of implies that we've got more to go through in this EP, which of course we do. This is the first track, but it's just nice to have that bell curve there to sort of sign us out. And again, it's 2 minutes well spent. Thematically, just really satisfying with the major leanings there. The sarcasm and wit is not lost if you're paying attention, as I mentioned before, but you can enjoy it regardless. The music itself is really sort of well played without a note out of place. You can tell they really played their instruments, and the studio production, recording, mixing, and mastering is really satisfying as well. I like the clarity of the tone of the vocals, the guitar, bass, drums, and an accordion. It's just a nice, well-leveled mix with no issues with resonant frequencies in the frequency spectrum. The music surrounds you in the headphones, and it's got dynamic range to it. The fade out at the end is really satisfying, and it's nice and loud without pumping. Just a heads up that with these analysis sections, there'll be stuff that I might say less with tracks after this because the feedback applies to it. But just if I don't say anything different, just assume the rest of it's awesome. Because we got Man Baby, track number 2. Oh, I love that sizzle of the guitars though, dude. Very kind of Rolling Stones.
So you're feeling grumpy, you had a bad day. Not everyone believes every
Good use of the cowbells.
You start to pout, you start to whine when no one tells you you're the greatest of all time. Who knew you were such
Great voicing of the bass there.
Yeah, you got no party, you got no class. You're just swimming through life bare ass. Who knew you were such a man, baby? Yeah, who knew you were such a man, baby? Who knew you were such a man, baby?
I'm loving the additional vocal layers, man. Really effective.
We're all wondering when the truth will dribble out, and when and if it does is still in doubt. You're crying loud and throwing shade, and still buying products China made. Who knew you were such a man, baby? Yeah, yeah, yeah. Who knew you were such a man, baby?
Bow, bow.
Who knew you were such a man, baby?
Loving the development of the drums here. And the organs as well. Crazy, dude. There was so much substance here. That drum solo in the end was a personal highlight for me, though. I loved the change of kind of like meter and kind of approach to the phrasings of those different on-beat syncopated parts. I think Man Baby was discussing an adult who is just not behaving maturely and is just being a real toddler, real piece of work. Talking about when they talk about not getting fed and everything like that, it's very kind of patronizing, but like in a really fun way. You know that like if you're too direct or dire with this kind of stuff, it just comes across as a little bit tactless. So if you can find a way to, again, be like kind of funny or humorous about it, show your intellect like Spud does, it's just great to listen to, you know. It's just really cool. It's funny, there's a sense of humor about it. I thought that the additional vocal layers in this one worked really well with the vocal fry and the grit from Spud on the main mic. You got these lady vocalists, the choir behind him, and there's just so much more flavor because of that, with the different articulation and the different octave ranges, but also the call and responses and the sort of bluesy kind of like gospel phrasing, there's certain elements there. It was just really fun. It was just a really fun song to listen through, and with that longer form factor you kind of do need more variety compositionally, but we had that here for sure. Again, we talked about that drum solo that we had in the later stage structurally, but there's also that the singers, the ladies who are singing, they're a different style of vocalist to Spud, and I think that when you have that sort of virtuosity of those legato passages and the vibrato, that's a different style, and you manage to amalgamate those in a piece like this, and it works. It's a beautiful thing. There are styles that can be a little bit too different. You know, like if you put like Ariana Grande with like a grindcore vocalist, it might be a little bit too much. Yeah, in this one we definitely had the right combination of elements. We had different verses and choruses in this one, as well as an extended outro section with that drum solo and little kind of like cowbell breaks and maybe a bridge as well. We had like a track that at 3 minutes 30 was really well fleshed out, you know, absolutely no filler in there whatsoever. It felt a bit more It was like a succulent meal. It was well fleshed out. I liked the guitar riffs that we had at the beginning. It was nice to have the Rolling Stones kind of rock and rollish kind of raunchy tone to it, kind of like we were taking the piss, but in a kind of like a saucy way. You know what I mean? I think that the unison with some of those sort of snare fill passages with the kicks and the bass lines, there's a great kind of tension with the push and pull between bam bam but bam bam, and then we kind of let things hang a little bit, and it was kind of dramatic, and there was, even before we had some of those additional vocalists coming in, we were playing with the listener's attention with again the speed of it, the relative kind of the relationship with it we were having. I think that also comes down to the use of toms in certain parts and then cymbals in others. It's just a kind of A-B side switch that is just very effective. It kind of goes high-low, high-low. And there was some cool bar chordal kind of passages we had on the rhythm guitars. That added a kind of major component in a track where I think if we'd gone minor key like the whole time, it just would have been a little bit too edgy. Maybe, I don't know, like it wouldn't have seemed as good natured in a weird way. In fact, most of the harmony was major, and that was a really interesting decision because it just kind of shows that we're trying to be positive about how much we dislike this person. And I just, there were some drum passages with some really interesting snare and tom fills as well. There was further, I think, development to those parts, not just with the solo, but also just a finesse with the transitions that really built alongside the really old, the old reliable guitar parts with the power chords and the bar chords and the way they were kind of arpeggiated or palm muted or strummed, the bass line underneath, the vocals doing what they need to on top of the different styles. I mean, the organ that we mentioned near the end was something that just kind of popped out, and I'm not even sure when that came in, if that was there earlier or not. There was just so much flavor in there. I did like the cowbells that I heard though. There were some cowbells, dock, 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 and now just a fun rhythmic device that was a different kind of tone or texture to the hi-hats or cymbal resonances. And I think also that kind of dreamy sort of like part in the 1:50 section there with just the lady vocalists were beautiful. It was just such a nice sort of break and refresher from some of the heaviness that we were discussing, even with it not being that heavy. Like, we weren't too on the nose, but just having the softness there and the layers overlapping each other was kind of mesmerizing in a sense, and just provided a nice palate cleanser for the halfway point. And I liked how they were kind of doing the kind of, almost kind of reminds me of a South Park skit in the way, the man baby kind of stuff. It's just, they were being playful about it, but they made it seem more grandiose than it was. It's just, and the spiritual element that kind of really sort of centers the kind of gospel kind of choir leanings there, almost like the higher powers are sort of smiling and laughing down at the baby having a tantrum. It's just the tone of the organ as well. I mean, that's a production thing, I suppose, but that vibrato, that tremolo, the wah 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 wah, it's just, it's nice, and it sounds like, I don't know, they're playing real, how do I say it without sounding so basic? I just like the analog approach with a lot of this. I feel like if we'd put too many synthetic elements into it, it might have seemed a little bit too kind of less grounded. I'm not trying to say that if you put electronic stuff in there, it can't sound quote unquote real. It's just, again, I like that pub rock sort of like vibe that we're getting from this. I just think it sounds nice and kind of like they're up for a bit of a scuffle, But yeah, fantastic track. Thematically, again, major oriented, I think, to not play too heavily into the kind of darker side of the subject matter. And studio production wise, just being able to carry those different vocal takes across the stereo field and not overplay a hand with them is just an absolute masterstroke. So honestly, similar comments production wise to the previous track. Great continuity over the EP so far. So it's good stuff. Because you have track number 3, Sloganeer. What is that? Like a circus thing, innit?
I'm a sloganeer. That's why I'm here. It doesn't matter if my words are filled with hate, if they roll right off the tongue. It doesn't matter if they're dumb or out of date, just gotta roll right off the tongue. I'm a sloganeer, a word engineer. Lend me your ear and I'll tell you exactly what you wanna hear. I'm a sloganeer.
phenomenal transfer to the brass here.
I'm gonna tell you exactly what you wanna hear. I'm a sloganeer. That's why I'm here. All that matters is my followers show no fear as they grow into an angry mob.
Ooh.
When they're chanting my words for the world to hear, then I'll know I've done my job. I'm a sloganeer. That's why I'm here. Yeah, I'm so sincere. It doesn't matter if my words are filled with hate. As long as my followers show no fear. I'm a sloganeer, a word engineer. That's why I'm here.
I'll transfer the keys.
Would you like a souvenir?
That was a surreal piece of art. I love that. It's so clever. Sloganeer isn't literally just talking about someone who says kind of witty, I was going to say whataboutisms. I hear a lot of whataboutisms from people who have a lot of slogans. They're discussing the followers getting riled into a tizzy, I assume relating to things like January 6th and stuff like that. But also just on social media in general, it's visceral, man. People can be so easily manipulated, and it's difficult to tell even if you're being like, I suppose it's wonderful, affecting music. I think anyone who listens to this will be able to relate to the idea of someone trying to convince them to think a certain way or feel a certain way, and they'll either respond positively or negatively depending on how much they want to believe it, believe the lie. But it's ruthless, and the delivery of the vocals is so gentle and so conversational, and it's so on point because of course that's how people talk in these situations. Typically I think people assume that if you're going to get like brainwashed, it's going to be by someone who's just up in your face and forceful, but no, often there are people who know exactly how to talk to others. They know what buttons to flick, and it's very creepy and uncomfortable. And I think that the way it was done here was just tremendous. So I applaud Spud for that. At 3 minutes 30, it's like a long track, and it feels uncomfortable because of what's being discussed. I don't mean that the musicality is lacking or that it's a bad song. It's just that when you understand what they're getting at, you're kind of sitting with someone unfurling the truth of their labors, and it's just brutal, dude. It's just brutal. The kind of circus, like that's just like you're in a clown show. Is just so, like, in some tracks, previous tracks, we were trying to be a bit more good-humored about it, but ironically, I feel like this track is the one that kind of cuts at you a little bit. It's so, it sets the scene and ambience really neatly, while still being really effective musically. I think the orchestral drums as well kind of make it seem more like a stage show, a theatrical kind of endeavor, which is what all it is, like smoke and mirrors. And there's like a playful nature to it as well, which makes it even worse. It kind of sounds like innocent kind of school kid music. You can imagine kids going to see the clowns at the circus, but it's the adults that are stuck in the tents. And the brass, when it comes in, those horns are just, they're so bright and dazzling, but also like some of the staccatos have a real kind of stank to them. They just have a sizzle and a menace to them, which kind of betrays the softness of some of those vocal parts. There's a real sweetness to the melodies that we choose for the vocal layers. And I think that having Spud by themselves in this makes sense as opposed to Band Baby, because here it's the Sloganeer having this discussion with you. And there's like, when the music surrounds you in the headphones, it just seems like things are going backwards and forwards. And it's almost overwhelming, and just how you feel like you're going insane from how peppy and poppy it is. Like the dissonance between what's being discussed and the innocence of the music is kind of disarming. Like the music goes from one side of the headphones to the other, and it kind of switches, and you're left sort of discombobulated. And we have the piano at the end for a bit of clarity, almost like you've been through like a session of brainwashing. And I mean, just how do you, there's like clarity at that point. You know, would you like a souvenir? And then the show's over, and you kind of think, did I consent to this? And the worst part is that if you remove the subject matter again, it's all really pretty and playful and nice sounding. It's another one of those songs where if you don't pay attention to the lyrics, you're missing out on half the story. You really have to hear what Spud has to say. You have to listen to the intricacies of those different verses to really kind of know, hey, this tone, again, it's not all of what it's about. There's different sides to it. And the major leaning of a lot of this, the way it kind of turns towards the major meter, it is just another kind of notch in the belt. It's one of those songs which is consistent across this EP. It's trying not to let it weigh you down too much. And there's this wonderful low end or bass response in certain parts which kind of digs at you a little bit, then goes away, and then you're floating a little bit, and it brings you down again. And there's different ideas, as well as that, again, that horn section, that ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-bam-bam. So structurally, it's very competent. Thematically, with the major leaning, you're just left with the studio production there, where a lot of the personality comes from the instruments themselves. Like, again, the kind of that kind of circus tone. I don't know what the instrument is specifically. It's like I'm sure there's a specific name for that instrument. Like, I think it's an organ of some kind. I just did a quick search. It's like an organ, just the menace to that organ. It's just captured so well. The tone is it's so authentic, clever. Things are well leveled within the frequency spectrum. The music surrounds you in the headphones. There's panning of instruments from left to right to kind of, again, sort of discombobulate you and kind of confuse you a little bit. But then, again, if you're not paying attention, just things are leveled really eloquently, and there's absolutely no issue with the production whatsoever. It's just a very interesting sort of art form track where it's elevated by the choice of instruments, as well as the nuance and how clever the lyrics are, as well as the expression and approach to those. We have Happy as Hell, track number 4.
Don't ask how I'm doing if you really don't want to know. The answers I may give you won't kill you, but it's more than you want to know. I looked on the bright side for so long, it made me blind. Now my pessimism's working overtime. Yeah, I'm happy as hell, yes I am. Oh, I'm happy as hell. Oh, I'm happy as hell, can't you tell?
Great unison with those lead guitars with the vocals.
Don't tell me the sky is falling, Captain Obvious. Seems like every day we say it can't get worse than this. I wake up in the morning with a smile upon my face, knowing it ain't my job to save the human race. Yeah, I'm happy as hell, yes I am. Oh, I'm happy as hell. Oh, I'm happy as hell. Can't you tell, can't you tell? I'm happy as hell.
Oh, great use of open heights. See, that's such a great use of 1 minute 37. Such a short track, but you get the exact sort of like message of it really clearly, and there's a lot of instrumental parts to appreciate and enjoy as well along the way. It just feels like a full meal. Happy as Hell, I think it's about someone who I think this is like a thing that most people can relate to. When someone asks how you are, but they don't actually want to know. And I think that you know, he talks about being blinded by optimism, and now being sort of drowned in pessimism, and it's just we're happy as hell, and that kind of complex, that cognitive dissonance, that difficulty we're having with kind of coping with the world as it is, as well as people's expectations about how we communicate with one another. People wanting to seem like they care when they actually don't. They just want to look like a good person. It's an interesting vibe. I feel like so much is covered in that 1 minute 37. It's a very sort of authentic kind of, and I'm going to say more than just authentic. It's a very human experience listening to Spud talk about this. I know music needs to be hashtag relatable, but it needs to also be worth hearing. And so I listen to this and I go, yeah, I would comfortably listen to Spud Davenport say more about this stuff, simply because he tells it in such an endearing and genuine way. I mean, if you want to listen to someone complain about stuff, they've clearly won at life, because that's often the thing we try to most avoid. We try to avoid other people complaining about stuff, but it's done in a way where it's tactful and mature. And I just think, outside of the vocal performance, where there's just that kind of raunchy kind of vocal frying parts there, and that kind of oomph behind it there that suits the purpose of the lyrics in the song itself. Just structurally, again, at 1 minute 37, it's nice and short with absolutely no filler. I like how the lead guitars, they go behind the vocals in some part, and there's this wonderful sort of rhythmic unison with them. They elevate in that upper range there and just kind of elevate it, and they kind of make it ascend. And I think the keys as well that we had like at the start of the previous track, just like a don 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 don, just they add a kind of nice sense of pace there that's enhanced by some of the drum passages there, which have a mixture of different eighth note kind of quarter, eighth note sort of kick snare and cymbal patterns there, with some really neat open hi-hat passages later on sort of offbeats, as well as just some snare fills that have a great bit of pep and speed to them, rolling around the occasional 16ths. The rhythm guitars as well have a nice bit of sizzle to them, with the power chord kind of like down-picked elements there, bum 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 bum, and that speed and the tempo of it makes sense. We're moving forward and we're moving at a frantic pace, but one where we kind of maybe don't have a solid foothold, but we're also trying to keep our patience and not lose it. And when he goes, "That's how I'm doing," if you really, we have the instruments come in at that point on that really. I think it's so cool to have Spud just by themselves. Just you hear them roar. After Sloganeer, there's a different approach to it than you had before. So he's being himself, and there's no circus, there's no smoke and mirrors anymore. It's just him being real, him being himself. And having the other instruments come in with a similar sort of energy and intensity and a want to be there is just enthralling. And there's occasional pick scrapes and sort of outro extensions of the guitar parts as well, but ultimately it's more sort of concentrated or focused around the lead elements of the vocals. And I think that the kind of repeaters or the delays that we had on the guitar leads at the end there, how they it's just really kind of pretty sounding. We never become too dark or dismal. It's never too on the nose in terms of the frustration or anger or sadness that we feel. We're always trying to sort of temper it in a way which will be pleasant to listen to from an active and passive perspective, without being generic or cheesy or try sort of like phoning it in. It's meticulous in that approach. Thematically, I think the tone of the instruments, and this is something that's probably going to be across the EP itself, there were just stylistic choices and different instruments chosen that are specific to that piece, which gives a song each unique sense of identity. I just think that the guitar tone sold it really neatly here. I liked that the expression of his vocals sort of elicited a similar connection to the vocals lyrics, and I don't think it needed more than that. So it's just a great use of 1.5 minutes, and sort of just production is consistently top notch. No complaints at all. I'm just nailing it. Because we got one more track, So America. Let's go. Let's do it. Shakers?
When monkeys become king, they'll ruin everything. Or is that exactly where we're at? As the bullshit gets deeper, we'll need a new zookeeper to shovel all the elephant crap. This place I love is a zoo. Hard to believe what we've turned into. This place I love is a zoo.
Such a scratchy tone, but it sounds cool, man.
Scary to see what we've turned into. This place I love is a zoo. Giraffes will rubberneck just to see the wreck of what this country has become. As the BS gets deeper, we'll need a new zookeeper to curtail the pandemonium.
Interesting color responses on the, or accents on the vocal parts at the end.
Place I love is a zoo. Hard to believe what we've turned into. This place I love is a zoo. Hopefully democracy pulls through. America, where are you now? Don't you care about your sons and daughters? Don't you know we need you now? We can't fight alone against the monster. America, America, don't you know we need you now? We can't fight alone against the monster. America, America, America.
An uncertain chord to finish on. Tumultuous period we're in. It sounds like we're crying out at the end of that. We talk about, we have that kind of tongue-in-cheek approach to talking about the zoo animals who's going to sort of shovel the elephant crap, but eventually with Zoo America, we get into this situation where we're just hoping that democracy can pull through. And I think it's such a wonderful adjustment to make with our approach or response to it, that at the end we're like, no, seriously, can this please work? Can we please try and actually fix this for real? This is exactly why protest music exists. And because we need to be able to be open and honest about the state of things and have sincerity with that and look at the reality of it. It is a bit of a zoo, it is a bit of a mess, and we don't know who's gonna fix it. We hope someone will, but we don't know at this point, and we're just trying to figure it out. But I do hope democracy can pull through. I really do. It looks like it's got its challenges ahead, but I think this is why music like this is more important now. It's just as important now, more than ever, I think that earnest approach from Spud near the end was that kind of extra additional bit of depth that we needed in order to make this really sort of spectacular. It just adds that kind of welcome twist in the towel, that extra bit of kind of like icing on the cake. And I love it. I love the maturity there, the intelligence to try and to do that. And I've got no other sort of I just feel like I'm going to be glazing if I continue onwards. So just a really great way to end an EP vocally with the storytelling. It's structurally 3 minutes 30, and we have different chapters to it there. As I mentioned with the first part talking about the zoo and then kind of trying to see if there is a solution, calling out for it somewhere out there. And I think that's an interesting sort of we haven't done that yet, I don't think. And you've got those kind of quirky rhythm guitar riffs at the start with the flam signing us in, and we have full power, full bore, and there's absolutely no filler at the start. The instruments coming in, we've got that accompaniment, we've got that ground floor for Spud to speak their truth on. And I like, again, how easy to listen to it is. There are some really pleasant diatonic melodies coming through from Spud that worked well neatly with the sort of chord progressions, the harmonies there. in the verse and sort of chorus sections. There are also these really fantastic sort of shimmery kind of chorusy reverb sort of accents on the end of some of the chorus lines and the repetitions there, which are just they're kind of ghostly. Like they've got their own sort of presence there. Like there's this like the voices of those who have passed are calling out to us. I think that halftime part at like 127, or when we have those breaks, just to sort of go away from the grind of the eighth notes, the 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, and are sensible because it gives us pause to consider what's come before us. And I think that the guitars, bass, and drums know to sort of be in time with each other and to allow that space, and those decay tails is just sensible songwriting and performance. And then switching to like a half time and from the normal time is just a great way to sort of adjust the flow of a track rhythmically to make it more interesting and to adjust to its different chapter or a different feel. There's a hell of a scratchy tone to that guitar solo that we have around the 55-second mark, and I'm not usually a massive fan of the super scratchy tones to a point where like they're kind of thin sounding, but I think that kind of raucous kind of nature is very punk, and it also it's kind of like a wire is fried, like something's kind of gone wrong, but it's trying to do the best it can in order to be heard. I dig that kind of expression to it. There's great bends and hammer on legato parts there, and it's got a kind of free-flowing feel to it, you know. It's not like completely quantized, you know. There's a bit of kind of like looseness in some parts, but in a way that provides attitude. There's like a kind of a harshness to some of the bits as well, with the sort of unison bends, or like the way some notes go with each other, but like not in a sort of disharmonious chromatic way. It's just kind of bluesy with a mixture of pentatonic and minor and major kind of modal patterns. And around the 3-minute mark, where you have the kind of those chords, which I'm not sure what chord that is. I think it's a 7th. There's like a 7th chord that is being played there, which lacks resolution there, that I thought was a smart move because it infers, hey, we don't know how this is going to end up. So thematically, even though we have some pentatonic passages and some major and minor chords there, which elicit more of a diatonic flow, we are also having occasional kind of bits of kind of glitchiness or discomfort there, or sort of lack of knowing to sort of make sense with what we're discussing vocally, because we're not sure how it's going to turn out. I think as a final note, just on the instrumental parts though, I talked about the lead guitar solo before. We do have other lead parts like bends and kind of unison bends, and they are a sub-layer to the main vocals. And I just think that extra bit of oomph behind them just adds, again, compositional diversity, but also more fire under the belly for us to then maybe stop for a moment and go halftime, and then for things to kind of float and just, again, it's that push and pull that we've spoken about earlier. But ultimately, just, yeah, a really well-structured track, well played, lots of different sort of lead and sub-lead passages within this one. Really competent percussive performances there as well. The drums are nice and tight with the bass being supportive. And a mixture of different sort of like distorted or overdriven and clean guitar tones that sort of niche really neatly. I've spoken about the kind of scales and sort of main sort of like themes and chorus patterns used and structure. The studio recording, mixing, and mastering is similar comments to the rest of it. I mean, I'm going to talk about this track more in the conclusion, or this EP, should I say, more in the conclusion, but I suppose before we get there, just this is probably going to be quite a positive session. And so welcome to the conclusion of my review of this EP from an act named Spud Davenport. This EP titled Assterisk, all about the ridiculous state of America today as per the website. So in this section, I'm going to be providing an overall, analysis of the EP, not individual tracks, because I've given their own sort of mini sort of like conclusions, but this will be about the overall EP, as well as of any applicable constructive critique, and then finally my general thoughts from a listener's perspective. But first of all, what do we think this EP is about? I mean, aside from all about the ridiculous state of America today, we discuss how professionally people can be assholes to the extent that it makes other people want to be like them, or their kids want to be like them. Adults having temper tantrums and having devastating consequences because of that, and a way to tiptoe around them. Sloganeers and people who are brainwashed and sort of control people and sort of rile them up to do terrible things. Happy as hell with just the state of just trying to be okay around people and connect to them, and just trying to figure out how to communicate and what's real and what's not, and how to sort of find an equilibrium in this chaos. And then finally, Zoo America is just about not only accepting or like looking at the mess of what things are and what they might become, but also going, okay, can we actually fix this? And I think that that's just a fantastic journey that we have through this EP. I love it. I think that the concept, it's like got 5 chapters and they each make sense and they've all got a purpose and they're independent, but they transfer, and I wouldn't want it any other way. The way that Spud Davenport communicates is so tasteful. It is so, there is a sense of humor about it, and there are these witticisms and really kind of clever lines that are scattered throughout this. The persona that they play in Sloganeer is very authentic and very creepy. I liked that we had like those extra lady vocalists and Man Baby there to provide a kind of a satire, a parody of the whole Man Baby thing. Again, I remember it being sort of like South Parkish in approach there, which is a compliment. I think that though I equally enjoyed when it was Spud by themselves, and they were just talking about how frustrated they were about it or how annoyed they were, because they're so easy to listen to as well. They're fun to listen to. They don't take themselves too seriously, except when they need to. They're not afraid to show vulnerability, such as whether or not we ask if democracy can be saved and we call out for America near the end. There's this multifaceted kind of thing going on. We are showing the depth of Spud as a human being as well as a musician and as a vocalist, and it's wonderful to behold. We are very comfortable in a hidden chest voice, but a vocal fry occasionally, a conversational tone, really sort of like, again, on the mic, sort of like very polished, and again, any other additional takes, especially with Man Baby with the extra vocalists, a very proficient, wonderful legato sort of voice technique, and a different style of vocal or singing, which suited it tremendously. Just very, very happy with it. Structurally, these tracks are between 2 and 4 minutes, or 1.5 and 4 minutes, should I say. Right between the 2 to 4 minute sweet spot, where if it's less than 2 minutes, you're going to maybe be missing certain components. You might not have developed stuff enough, although that wasn't the issue with Happy as Hell. To be clear, Happy as Hell was a fantastic concept and done very, very well. We said everything we needed to in that. And if it's over 4 minutes, we might run into the issue of needing to sort of like add more variety, or not just rely on the 2 main sort of like ideas we have or something like that. We don't want to basically risk overplaying ourselves. And so each of these songs, again, had their unique identity. Sloganeer was more about the circus aesthetic with the different instruments and stuff. Zoo America, Man Baby with the choirs, like they each had their own personality and purpose. Typically there were verses and choruses to kind of sign us through, but there were some that were more sort of chapterized, such as Zoo America, again with the A and B side of the Zoo at the start, and then but the America part being repeated near the end. Like we're learning and sort of figuring things out as we go through. Like that's the point where we had like more of a turn, I suppose. But just genuinely, just so there's no filler in any of them. They were the right length for what they needed to, and if there was extra real estate, it was taken up by like solo sections, like guitar tracks or like drum parts, drum solos, and just lots of cool little components there. I really enjoyed the accordion as well and Arsehole. I thought that was really well articulated. Typically, the guitars, bass and drums and other instruments performed sort of like core key functions. The guitars were typically either power chord or sort of bar chord oriented with arpeggios, strum patterns, etc., or sort of like rock and roll kind of picked parts, if they were with most of it, or they were sort of like accenting certain chords for effect. And if there were leads, they were kind of these kind of scratchy, bluesy, or like lead standing parts that had like bends and vibrato, but a hammer on pull-offs and stuff. They weren't trying to be too virtuosic, but they were either supporting the vocals or like being in unison with some notes. But they never tried to stick out too much. They were not trying to dominate Spud at any point. We understood that Spud was the focal point, and that was completely reasonable. The drums were fantastic in terms of their sort of like different 8th, quarter, or 16th note patterns there. Very sort of like, we explored the kit. There were some interesting tom fills as well for transitions. I liked the tightness of the performance in general. I thought that was really well handled. It's really cool to listen to a drummer know how to pocket when required, but then also kind of like elevate and do a sort of like a snare fill if required there, just for a bit of zest or kind of like differentiation. But they knew to be supportive and foundational, and it was well welcomed. The bass guitar and throughout this album was typically supportive of the rhythm and bass lines, and I don't think we needed to overcomplicate that. Although there were some points where the bass did come up a little bit, was a bit more sort of like poignant or like assertive, and that was just a great extra bit of oomph and resonance within that range that was made. There was room made for it in the arrangement, so it was a very sensible decision there. There were tracks like Sloganeer where it was more sort of like related to creating, again, that circus sound. Like these ascending and ascending sort of like melodies there. They were almost kind of like a little bit too innocent for my liking, and we had the orchestral drums with very sort of like quarter note or kind of like rolls or kind of crescendos. And the brass as well that we had Sloganeer was kind of visceral sounding. At some point in Glowden it was very pretty, but other times it was almost sort of like sarcastic with the staccatos and the approach and such. And we had solos for that as well. We didn't rely too much on the vocals. We explored the different instruments in their various ranges, and even with the extra vocalists and Man Baby, sometimes they were singing more melodies, such as the interlude, alongside the Main Baby part, which kind of made more of a sort of a sub lead there. Just we'd never slept. We had push and pull in some parts where we'd sort of go normal time and half time to sort of switch up certain tracks, and we would just never take the listener's attention for granted. It was a very tight performance overall instrumentally, without a note out of place, and it just seemed like Spud knew exactly where they wanted to put the different pieces of the puzzle in a way that sort of elevated their lyrics or their vocal efforts, whilst also creating a compelling overall experience from a compositional songwriting perspective. Thematically, typically major oriented. There was some sadness occasionally, but it was only when we really wanted to commit to the bit. Like, we never tried to get too sort of dark or dire with our chord choices. There was occasional kind of like majors, like sort of extensions, but we didn't go for any Phrygians or diminished or anything like that. We had some bluesy kind of passages there, but it was never meant to be too sort of menacing. I just think with the heaviness of what we were discussing, it might have been, as I've said on the time, and I risk repeating myself, just two on the nose. We needed to find that sort of flavor, that balance there, and we did that in spades here, harmonically and contextually. But the studio recording, mixing and mastering is icing on cake, basically. And what I love about the mixing and mastering in this and recording is that it sounds commercial grade, but it does so in a way where like it sounds like you've recorded it in an actual studio, and you can hear the room sound, and you can hear the vocals and the crispiness of those, and the different sort of lead and kind of like clean guitar takes, as well as the rhythm elements there. The kind of spiciness, especially of that solo in Zoo America there, that raucous tone there, it's just very kind of gritty and kind of earthy, but like in a way that's not unprofessional. Like the clarity of the organs and Sloganeer and the orchestra drums, and like the way that you kind of had those niche and amalgamate into the mix was just commendable. And we just had all these different ideas, even when we were piercing with like Sloganeer again, we were trying to pierce and make the listener uncomfortable. It was deliberate, it wasn't accidental. And so to be able to get those centered and consistent across an EP is commendable. It takes practice to be able to get that stuff down, and it's as much a composition as a production thing. If you just get one instrument that's a little bit too much, it can be really disheartening and disconcerting. So we had no issues with that whatsoever. But there was dynamic range to it. Things were in the same loudness all the time. And the music was nice and loud without pumping, so the bus compression and limiting was handled. And I just think, again, Spud's vocals were just, they had compression, a bit of EQ on them and stuff like that, but they weren't overcomplicated. There were parts where we like accented certain words with choruses and reverbs and stuff. And I think there was a bit of maybe layering on the lady vocals and Man Baby, but they could clearly sing. And I just love that we didn't overproduce those things. But there's no real applicable constructive critique to this. It's commercial grade. I feel like as a standalone concept, it's just fantastic. Because to be clear, I actually have reviewed an album previously for Spud Davenport titled Songs for the Cynical. It's great music. I've never had a bad time with Spud's music, and I'm just glad that we're able to sort of continue this here with this really cool EP. I think from a general listener's perspective, as someone who is incredibly sort of like sympathetic for what the States is going through at the moment, and I really hope things improve soon. I hope that democracy does pull through, for sure. Just really effective music, solid kind of like genuine songwriting that has a message that I think will resonate with people, and I really hope it does. Because thank you for watching my review of this EP from an act named Spud Davenport, titled Assterisk. Gentle reminder that this EP is available today, so if you want to check it out on your own, you can do so. Links in the description. If you enjoyed it, again, please go check out their various social medias, as well as their website, and stay cool and stay safe, and please remember to support your local musicians and artists at this point in time, as they need to help more than ever with all the crazy stuff going on in the world. And I will catch you in the next SP Reacts. Spiderhands out.